Are you an accredited investor looking for a new opportunity to generate passive income and build the retirement of your dreams? Then elevate your investment game with Viking Capital, where wealth meets wisdom. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting out, Viking Capital can help guide you towards financial freedom through passive real estate investing. With strong and transparent underwriting, Viking identifies low-risk opportunities with the goal of preserving investor capital and maximizing long-term growth potential. And their accessible and responsive investor relations team will help you understand how each investment will impact your unique financial goals. With $800 million in assets acquired, more than $230 million in equity raised, and more than 5,000 units under management, Viking Capital is your path to early retirement. To learn about Viking Capital's latest investment opportunity, which is available for you right now, visit go.vikingcapllc.com/best. That's go.vikingcapllc.com/best to get started today. Quick disclaimer, the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are provided for informational purposes only and should not be construed as an offer to buy or sell any securities or to make or consider any investment or course of action. For more information, go to bestevershow.com.
It's okay to take it slow, strategize, organize, spend time with your loved ones too. But don't put all your energy in real estate. You may get burnt out, and right now, with the market forces, you may not be doing as you expected to go.
Welcome to the Best Ever Show, the world's longest running daily commercial real estate podcast. Our hosts interview commercial real estate experts every day to get you the best advice ever with none of the fluffy stuff.
Hey, Best Ever listeners, welcome to the Best Real Estate Investing Advice Ever Show. I'm your host, Joe Cornwell, and today I'm joined by Hemant Pawar. He is a real estate investor, owner-operator of the Equity and Zen Abode Group. He's an IT program director, and he is a GP and JV investor in 1,500 units over 9 states. Hemant is a first-time guest today, so we are going to dive into his background. And if you want to start us off, Hemant, with your current investing focus, and then we'll get into your background story.
Sure. So my current investing focus are the larger 100 plus units multifamily syndication properties. I started off with smaller ones, then I'm mid-range with some JVs, and then I got into larger multifamily syndications. I think I like the aspect of getting a group of investors together, working towards a common agenda, common objective, and make money for all of us. I think that works beautifully in the syndication aspect, and having friends and family around and people who want to do well in real estate, I think that's a good synergy with my current objective and focus.
Okay. So what year did you get into real estate investing, and what were you doing prior to that?
So I got into real estate in June of 2021. I had no background in real estate. I read some book and I watched a Bigger Pockets podcast and in March of that year, and I said I need to do something. Just to get it started, I started looking at duplexes, purchased something in Cleveland just to get a Midwest cash flowing property kind of experience. But very quickly, I realized multifamily is the way to go, and the scale of operations and the benefits of partnerships and partnering in their backyards, that really attracted me. And many people say that was one of those challenging times when the markets were turning, and all that impact or all the mistakes I would have made alone were kind of mitigated because of the decisions I took of joining hands with partners, senior operators, and making sure the investors are safeguarded.
Interesting. Yeah. So you scaled quickly. If you've been investing now for, let's call it a little over 2-3 years, something like that, obviously you scaled rapidly. So what made you want to get into real estate in the first place? And what was your career like before you got into real estate?
I have a standard IT career where you start as a software engineer, go to a mid-level manager, and then a director level profile. But what really changed my thought process or direction towards doing something more and finding some time for myself apart from just my career objectives was it was one of those events where you meet someone or you are in a situation where you need to take some decision. I was in a similar situation once where I came up across a family which was unfortunately caught in a human trafficking related situation. They were not at fault. They were unfortunately at the wrong place at the wrong time. And at that moment, when I decided to help them, there were like four small kids and a single mom. I decided to help them get back to wherever they were from, made sure that their education and their housing was taken care of. And the way that incident shaped my own life and my own destiny as to I could do something so simple, but which had such a bigger impact, because today that family runs their own business. They have four other families that they have employed just like them. It was a domino effect. By just making sure that one family was taken care of. They were living on the streets before. Today they have their own house. One of the girls got married. The others have passed their education. One of them is a pharmacist, and one of them runs the business of the family that we helped open, me and the social worker who was in charge of them. So that gave me the inspiration to not just think of me and not just think of my career as the whole and soul of what defines me. And then I started thinking about what other avenues are there where I could keep on doing this, where there's more income coming in, where my time and effort is spent not just on my growth, but also helping other people's and get them on the right path. And while I was thinking about that during COVID situation, everybody was working from home, and I started looking at avenues. As an IT guy, the first thing comes to mind is the stocks related option, right? And I was really bad at stocks. I'd call it luck or call it listening to the wrong advice. I never was successful in stocks. I did invest in some of those big stable companies, but the way the others play, I knew I was not that person. The other one was real estate, which I had always heard, right? And I had never purchased anything of my own or invested in anything else. Primarily being I moved across a lot in the world. I lived in four countries and came to the US 8, 9 years back, I guess. Yeah. So I waited for my chance to do it. And then like I was like, why don't I just start exploring that option? And that was when I came across the passive investing scenario, how we could have more cash flowing avenues that could support my other endeavor. And that was when I started seriously thinking about real estate. And I jumped in and found my position, found my role to do something in this business.
That's a moving story. You had motivation and your why that you hear people talk about often to increase your cash flow and your income to help other people. And it started with helping victims of sex trafficking. And obviously, that is a topic that we hear a lot about today. And it seems like it has become an increasing problem over the last couple decades. Are you still involved with that sort of work today?
Yes, I have so far adopted around 27 kids and 7 families from that group. I focus on that group, whatever they need. I make sure that they reach those milestones which help them to become independent and self dependent. So something like this doesn't repeat. And they go on helping other folks like them, which I really like. I'm also a sponsor of many families that came from Ukraine to the US after the Russia war. So that has been my latest endeavor this year, where I fill up their sponsorship papers, make sure they are settled with their families and kids, and whatever the immigration department wants me to provide, I do that. So that's been my latest endeavor. And who knows how it will diversify into other ones. But I just take each day as it comes, each situation as it comes. I never knew I would be helping that family, giving away almost 80-90% of my savings and wealth to one family who went in and changed so much. So I don't plan much, it just happens.
Well, it's very admirable and it's moving to hear you say that. And I guess looking at it from the real estate side, it's easy to understand with that much passion and motivation to help these people how you were able to scale such an incredible and impressive portfolio in such a short amount of time. And I know you mentioned in the intro that you were able to do that through partnerships and through syndication. So looking at your portfolio and your current business model, what is your role in that and how are you impacting your deals?
When I started multifamily, like I said, probably the worst possible time to join this industry where the cap rates were compressed, the cash flows were coming slower and slower, right? So I figured out quickly the only two things I can do is find a deal or find the money for the deal, right? And many people were looking for that. There were positions available for these two roles. Sitting in California, finding investors was easier than finding the deals. I could always build broker relationships, call the brokers across various states and start looking at properties. But I always look at the 20% that can get me the rest of the 80%. So I decided let me focus on the investor aspect of it. Then I researched on who are the big operators in my circle or the extended circle, what they have done, what their experience has been, what are the good and negative things that I have heard or not heard. Just trying to research who are the players who know how this goes. I joined a mentorship program. I applied all that education to learn underwriting, to learn operations, to learn asset management theoretically before I even jumped on a deal. After that, when I got my first opportunity, we had a heart to heart, tried to see where the synergy is, where the team spirit is there, where there's a healthy interaction of ideas. Everyone was on the same page of discussing how they want to do the deal. And I started with my friends and family first. I got them on board, a couple of friends who've always been doing real estate on the personal side, buying houses or the vacation homes. And so they were intrigued by the idea and they put some money on my first deal. And that's how my journey started. But what that allowed me to do is the operations aspect and the investment aspect. I started talking about that marketing to various people or various groups that I was associated with. The funny thing was, being a consultant to a healthcare IT company, I was under contract to not be doing so much of this openly. They have security issues and security compliance things. So everything I did was under the radar because real estate is nothing related to healthcare, anyways. So I met people. I used to visit various REI meetups. I got various referrals from people saying, we heard from somebody that you are doing this and we would like to know more. And that's how I started. The key thing here is if you are very transparent and honest about the good, bad things, what is right, what can go wrong, people like the fact that they are hearing more than it's necessary. The important thing is to make sure the fear of investing in something which they may not be knowing a lot and they may not be hearing from a lot, that kind of scares people who are very hands on or who buy single families and vacation homes and do their own stuff. So I focused on these two, three things to alleviate these fears. So even today, I have monthly LP calls or monthly investor calls for 20 minutes on every property. We don't do much, we don't talk much, we just showcase the income expenses, we showcase some pictures, we showcase what's new going on in the property, and people love that because that was one of the things that I heard was a problem in the industry where people said, hey, we sign checks, the money goes, but we don't hear from you for a quarter, just an email or a newsletter, or sometimes they don't hear a lot for even a year, So I focused on these gaps. One, oversharing information that may or may not relate to them, but still gives them some knowledge. Two, being in touch with them consistently every month. And three, making sure that their investment is protected through a very strong operations monitoring.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the tactical side of what you're doing. So you said you're 1,500 units over 9 states. What are the major markets you're investing in?
I get this question a lot, and the thing that I changed, or the thing that really helped me when I started, many people say for first time, what markets are you in, or choose your markets. That's what most of the programs or mentors would tell you. My markets were Texas and Florida, and I didn't find anything as a newcomer there, right? And I said, I'm doing something wrong, or maybe I need to change my approach because this market is new. Many people haven't seen this kind of market. So the simple change that I did was instead of looking at markets, I started looking at partners. For example, Nashville is a great market. Why don't I look at that? Even Albuquerque or New Mexico has some bright spots. Georgia, anyways, is a good market, but I had not thought about that. Then I started looking at people who are doing deals in these areas, connecting with them, having a heart to heart as to what they look for in partnerships. And that's when I started finding something that really interests me or which was something productive and profitable for the investors. So I started with JVs in Tennessee, in Iowa City, then syndications in New Mexico, Georgia, and that was my path. So I focused on the partners, their infrastructure, their connections, because really, once you raise your money and it's a good asset and the underwriting is good, it's about how well the operations are set up and how well you can work on the rehabs, work on the business plan. How many connections do you have? If one general contractor fails, you make a quick call, somebody else comes in, and the business plan goes according to plan. So I focused on those aspects, made sure the partnerships had that kind of infrastructure, and then I joined them. And then my Florida, Texas came way later, not in my initial cycle.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know we don't know each other well, but I'm an agent. I am a multifamily investor based in Cincinnati, and I have a construction company as well. So when I speak to people, whether it's clients, customers, or other investors who are looking to invest in Ohio, a common question that I hear, a common conversation I have is what you mentioned, where new investors are always looking at, well, what market has the highest returns, or what market has the highest population growth, or the most stable cash flow, or lowest vacancy, or whatever, right? There's a lot of the data out there that you can look at as an investor. And to your point, I find myself most often saying, I don't think any of those one factors is as important as investing with either the right partners, if you're doing a joint venture or even as a limited partner, or having the right team. So if you're going to buy out of state real estate, you got to have a good agent, you got to have a good contractors, handyman, you got to have a good lender. All of those things that come with when you're buying out of state that can be challenging, especially for new investors. So I think that's a great point that is often overlooked, especially for new investors, where I don't think micro data on markets is as important as some of the other fundamentals that go into it. So with all the rapid expansion you've had the last few years, what are your goals in the next 3 to 5 years? I mean, where do you want to go as an investor? Is there anything you want to do differently with investing?
Absolutely. I think I didn't share certain things where, even after being very careful and trying to do things diligently, I was still a newcomer when I started. And there was a world of multifamily that I had not understood when I started. And it was all as we go along kind of education. So there were lots of mistakes that happened on the first one or two deals where certain important things were missed, not from my side, but from my partner's side. So understanding where the gaps happen and why senior partners also could do such kind of mistakes. So my goals and objectives are based on how I can help the community in a way where there are more and more people who want to be multifamily investors and not just passive investors. So my goals currently are, when I talk to a new person, I always look for a partner in them and not as an investor. For me, if I'm talking to someone and that person says, "Hey, I have 100K, I would love to invest on this deal," my next question is, how are your friends and family placed? Are they also invested in real estate? Do they love real estate? What I'm trying to do is, if this one person has 100K, how many of his friends and family have similar 100 or 50K or whatever it may be? And if it turns out that they have some sort of strength or some sort of background which can easily make them bring in or invest or be a capital raiser on a deal, I offer that option to them with some light activities on asset management, make sure all our legal compliance, SEC legal compliance is fulfilled for all partners. They are not just being capital raisers. So what I'm doing is, I am looking at that person not just for my current deal, but even if they are not able to do that, they come in at a lower hurdle and market my property within their friends and family, then I have a new partner for my next 5 deals. So I'm not just looking short sighted on my current one, I'm looking 5 deals down the line. I myself, with my investor network, can raise enough to have a satisfactory position in a deal. But if I can get a new partner, then I'm looking for my next 5 deals to have someone already in place. So my objective right now is to help the new entrants in this space to get onto their first deals. We also have small group investor calls, not just the webinar that we give, but many a times I have had small 10, 12 member calls too with new investors, somebody's friends and family, and I help them to bring them on board. The reason I'm doing it is, I'm not just creating an investor community, I'm also creating an operator plus investor community. Now I have run my own deals last 6, 8 months, the deals that I have done, I have led them from the front. Today I can pick up the phone, make 20 calls and raise a couple of $1 million because I have this kind of network which can not just invest but also can be partners on my deals. So I'll continue with this objective for the next year or so because the market is still in flux. Many people are still struggling to get onto their first deal. And I just want to create a win-win situation here. Educating investors, bringing their money on board is anyways, that's what I have been doing. And many people just say, no, just take my check and I'm good with that. But that would be my objective now.
That's an interesting concept. It makes sense. So you're bringing people into the fold, into your network. As you grow that relationship, you find out maybe they do have skill sets to be an active member or general partner that they weren't even aware of. And as you mentioned in the very beginning of this call, finding deals and raising capital are certainly two of the most fundamental aspects of large multifamily and syndications. So taking a step back, when you're looking for these deals, what specifically are you looking for? What types of assets? What vintage? Get into some of the specifics of what you look for in a good deal.
So when I started and some of the lessons learned during that time, the way I have changed my strategy and my acquisition criteria now is I would go in for deals that are 1980 and above, right? Initially, I was okay to take some risks or look at older properties. But what I've realized is the way the market has been the last 2.5 to 3 years, and the way the third parties are changing their terms and the way they are doing business, whether it is lenders, brokers, insurance providers. Everyone knows insurance is a big problem, the kind of rates that we are getting. The bridge loans are coming due, people are in a problem. So I'm trying to reduce those kind of risks by making sure the properties are at least of a certain age, which is not unfavorable if something like this comes up again. One of my older properties, the insurance provider just mentioned to us that they won't be providing service from next year onwards because it is an older property. Funny thing is, they just gave us insurance 16 months back. So didn't they know that? So, right. So I'm trying to mitigate those risks. So 1980, a little newer vintage, it could be a medium rehab, even 50-60% of units if they can be rehabbed, keeping enough meat on the bone. If my investors get 20% average returns, anything between 15 to 20% IRR, they are happy even in this market. Right now, what we are seeing is the way the market is settling down after the ups and downs of the last 2.5, 3 years. Everybody is waiting, watching, being extra careful. And one way to be extra careful is buy something that is solid, that even when it sells on projections, it sells at a favorable terms and favorable situations. And the lenders or the third parties don't come back to the new buyer in unfavorable terms, right? So trying to make sure those foundational aspects are good during the acquisition criteria. And only then I move ahead.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And with the way the insurance market's gone the last year, I buy a lot of older properties as well. And that's been my model for the last 7 years. And it's become more and more difficult between the cost of construction on older properties and insuring them. It is exceedingly expensive and difficult. And it seems to be a trend that we are only going to continue getting more expensive on.
We'll get back to the show, but first, some sponsors I'm confident you'll find value in learning more about. Places come in all shapes and sizes. Whether it's a 3-story townhome or a 300-square-foot condo, Apartments.com will help lease them all. Because no matter what kind of rental property you own, Apartments.com believes that every landlord, from big to small, deserves access to the most renters and to the same experts who have helped millions of leases get signed over the years. When it comes to the most complete set of tools for getting the job done, Apartments.com has you covered. Comprehensive applicant screenings help make sure you're getting the best renters possible, and online rent collection helps your renters pay on time, every time. From tracking expenses to maintenance requests, Apartments.com lets you streamline your entire approach to property management. From townhomes to duplexes to everything in between, list them all with Apartments.com. The place to list a place.
So it sounds like you have several different partners now that you've partnered with. How are you finding these people, and what would your advice be to the listeners on who to look for in a partner?
Most of my partners, I found some of them from my mentorship group, some of them from REI meetups, some of them randomly chatting on their post on Facebook or listening to their podcast. Maybe some of your guests are also my partners, by the way, your previous guests, and sending them an email and just introducing myself and getting on a call. So all of my partnerships have happened that way. I didn't know anyone when I started. to be honest. I build that slowly, gradually. But really, the first one or two calls is always talking about what their objectives, what their goals, what their background, and what's the synergy in talking about the investment goals of our partners and investors. Some people have investors who don't want to sell properties at all. Some people want to keep rolling their money every few couple of years. Some people love to work with family offices only. Some people bring in private equity. They like to keep, even if the terms are a little strict, they still want to go ahead with that. And discussing the advantages, disadvantages, benefits, their experiences, their learnings. Initially, I was very scared of private equity or family offices, but now when I see the advantages, especially in the market, that the way it has changed in the last 2, 3 years, I see why people love that aspect of this game. So really, it's a very healthy exchange of ideas and what kind of communication lines are open during good times, during bad times, those kind of discussions. Today, I have a couple of properties that are not going as per projections. They are falling behind. And some of the partners have just closed themselves. That's when I started new and I still had to go over the bring some maturity to my dealing with partners. And those are the deals where some people are just so close, they don't want to talk about it, they don't want to answer any hard questions. So I have formulated various ways in my initial communication with these new partners how to bring up these topics early on. And everyone is great, wants to do something nice in this field. But when challenges come, when you have to face hard situations, when third parties are putting pressure on you, how do you interact with them? How do partners come? How do you want to work with partners together to handle that situation? That's an important aspect in today's world. And the other aspects about how transparent are we? How do we share our data with new people who join us as new partners? Many a times I have seen newcomers are kept not so much in the loop. A lot of data is shared later, a lot of data is kept close to the heart. I don't have that mentality at all. I just put all the cards on my table, whether it's a prospective partner or whether it is a confirmed partner. Because then that way, when the person comes in, they know what they are getting into. So those are the kind of discussions I have with the new partners. But to answer your question, it's been the mentorship programs, the REI groups, friends, or partners from previous folks who connect with me, and then we start discussing our synergies in this space.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect thing to look for in a partner is somebody who's going to be symbiotic, somebody that is going to bring a dynamic to the deal or to the partnership that you don't have. And it sounds like, summarize what you said, is networking in general has led you to many, many opportunities, whether that's raising money, partnerships, finding deals, learning about real estate. You mentioned finding mentors. So that is something that I also stress to almost everyone I talk to in the real estate field. It's like the more people you can meet, shake hands with, have calls with, whether that's through social media, Zoom, or in person. I don't want to be cliche, but the cliche of your network is your net worth is very true.
There's one thing I do want to mention here. When I started, I don't know whether it was my personality or many people said, "Why are you doing that?" But it just happened naturally. I didn't know the tricks of how to play the game well. But strangely, it actually helped me in my journey. Was when I was talking to potential investors, whether it is friends, family, or their friends and family. I used to showcase some deal as an investment prospect. I also used to talk about some other deal somebody else is doing and what I liked about them. And you know what? That's also available if you want to do that, which was kind of harakiri, in everyone was like, why are you showing, like a suicide thing? But I just wanted their benefit. I just wanted them to take an option, whatever they thought was good for them. And every time they invested in my deal, even though the other looked with good numbers, it looked pretty and it had better experienced players. Every time they invested in my deal. So is also your honesty shows in different ways. So don't ignore some qualities that you naturally have and don't let any impressions get on those natural qualities. Yes, it's a business. Yes, social media affects and impacts a lot. Yes, there's a lot of marketing and salesy stuff going on. But the more natural, honest, and transparent you are, it does help your progress. That's something that I wanted to add.
Yeah, I agree. The thing I've learned in all 7, 8 years I've been educating myself, doing networking, meetups, being on podcasts and listening to podcasts like this one, you often hear people say, seek to add value first whenever you're meeting someone. And that's great in theory, and that's a great philosophy. But the problem with that is I feel like it's almost gotten to be a cliche mask that people wear in the real estate business. And as you mentioned, if you're not being authentic and you're not being who you really are, and you're putting on almost like a caricature for someone when you meet them, people feel that. Human instinct will tell you when someone is acting versus being themselves. And while I agree that you want to try to seek and add value with the people you meet, and the idea being add value first and it will be reciprocated to you, if you're not doing that in an organic way, it just comes across as you're virtue signaling something because you want to get something out of someone, if that makes sense. So yeah, the point of that being that you have to be authentic. You have to be who you really are. And don't try to pretend to be somebody else for the sake of networking or doing business and things like that. All right, let's transition into the best ever lightning round. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. What is best ever book you read recently?
It was called A Journey Within. It's about the kind of questions that we ask ourselves as a person, as a human being, as a son, brother, husband, and the kind of reflections that we have throughout our life, and the kind of decisions and options we have in front of us, and how do we choose the best path ahead. So it was more of like a spiritual going inside kind of a book. So that's the book I read, the best ever book I read recently.
How did that help you?
It helped me to organize the various roles that I'm currently playing in my life. My parents, they're getting old, they want more time with me. How do I organize that along with my work and real estate? I have been single for a while now. I put all my energy and effort in real estate, almost 40 hours W2 and 40 plus hours real estate didn't give me enough time. I do want to focus on my personal life, find someone suitable for myself, get back into the dating game. That book really showcased some of the good qualities I may have as a partner, which I'm not exploiting at all. So I would love to do that. And also the kind of philanthropy activities that I did, and how I can be the same normal person, but at the same time keep on doing these changes without sacrificing a lot of my personal objectives, but being very true and honest to that philanthropic objective. Those kind of questions got answered while reading that book.
That's great. I want to comment on what you mentioned about the personal life, because real estate can be addicting, can be all encompassing. It's easy as investors, especially once you start having some traction and you have a couple of good deals and you start making some money. It's easy to ride off of that dopamine you get from that. It's almost like a drug in a way. Obviously, it can be a positive thing, but it can also be a negative thing. If your life gets out of balance and you get too focused on work or too focused on making money, I can speak personally that I lost relationships along my journey, including my first marriage. And a big part of that was the disconnect, because I was so focused on work. I was a police officer working 50 hours a week, and then I was doing 30 hours a week in real estate. And obviously that doesn't leave much time for your personal life. So I think it's important for people listening that while I love real estate, I'm passionate about it. That's why I'm here on this show talking about it and interviewing people like you. But it's also important to maintain that balance, to not lose sight of the big picture when you're on your journey. So anyway, I wanted to comment on that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And when I'm talking at various conferences or events or on stage, and many folks, they showcase that energy of doing something more, sacrificing their personal and family time. And nowadays I say a word of caution: be slow. It's okay to be slow, because you may go as fast as you want, but certain market forces right now may not support that fast growth anyways. So it's okay to take it slow, strategize, organize, spend time with your loved ones too, but don't put all your energy in real estate. You may get burnt out, and right now with the market forces, you may not be doing as you expect it to go. So those are the kind of things I do. I send the message across to folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Real estate, it should be the get wealthy slow path, and can't lose sight of everything else. So you mentioned your help with the victims of trafficking and other things. Anything else you do to give back, or anything else on that topic you want to mention?
Yes, just being a mentor, help people give better interviews when they are applying for a W2 managerial IT job. people from my network, the college interns who may want some projects in some companies, how to help them to network with folks who may want them as an intern. Those are the kind of things that I do. And the philanthropy takes a lot, where every month I just check everyone is doing okay, their education is doing okay, whether they need anything and they are doing what they're supposed to do. I think that takes up most of my time giving back. And then the real estate, the new investors, trying to make new partners from people who are hopeful to do something, or maybe their first deal in real estate, or join hands with folks like me. I'm no senior or expert yet, but I'm just the connector of people, and I love that role. I take that very seriously, to be honest.
Yeah, that's incredible work, and it's moving, all the things you've mentioned. On the deals you've done, what is one of the biggest mistakes and lessons learned from it?
I think the first deal, and that's one of the reasons I ask people to go a little slower and do a lot of research before jumping in, and especially in this market scenario, where you are eager to start, you want to go fast, you have paid for the mentorship, you have bought all the books, you have done all the networking, but you want to just get onto a deal. And you meet partners, they have good CVs, they seem to be good folks, and you jump on the deal and you raise capital on that deal and take up a few asset management tasks on the deal. But the stage at which you come onto a deal is also very important. If you're not part of the due diligence process, make sure you review the checklist of that due diligence. Make sure to check the rent rolls. Make sure to check what kind of tenants are living there. Make sure they have been paying on time and the other partners have had a thorough review of all this data. Because when I jumped in on the first property, we were all eager to start, and when we started operations, within 3 months we came to know that there was 20 gang members of a drug dealing gang living on property. They were all under the radar, but they were there. There was a lot of delinquency. The seller had fudge reports. It turned out that one of the partners who was supposed to be doing the due diligence had not seen all the apartments. He only saw 70% of the apartments during the walkthroughs. So many things were hidden. So again, not to blame anyone, but sometimes we want to trust people. We don't see the hidden motive or hidden agenda that the sellers may have sometimes because they just want to get rid of their properties. So be very careful. I still love those folks. They're good people. Mistakes happen. It doesn't mean they won't be making mistakes. They may have more properties. They may have more exits. But sometimes things happen. Sometimes you miss something. Sometimes the market forces make you overlook things that should come naturally to you. But as a new investor, make sure you diligently follow your education. Make sure the checklist is there. Talk to a few people. Review the deal with some of your other experienced partners from your network, and then move ahead. I think that was my biggest lesson. Trust and verify should be the name of it. I mean, we keep hearing that, another cliche, but I gave you a perfect example. We spent like 6-8 months kicking out those gang members. They trashed our property. We had to hire security agencies that affected the NOI. It's doing well now, but me as a newcomer, for me it was a shock. It was a nightmare. So just wanted to share that experience with everyone.
Yeah, trust but verify. It's an old adage, but it stays true forever. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time. It was an awesome conversation, very moving with your why and all the philanthropy stuff you're involved in. I appreciate you sharing that. Where can our listeners learn more about you and get in touch with you?
Yeah, so my website is www.jewelequity.com, Jewel equity.com. It's named after my mother. Her name means jewel. So I rebranded myself this year. I started off with another LLC. And there you can have my calendar, my email. Every Monday, I have an open networking session where people can come and ask anything, or we just generally share our learnings, ideas, lessons learned, so new people don't make the mistakes that we made. So you'll find a link to register for that too. But Jewel Equity is my website name, and you can get in touch with me through my website.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to link to that in the show notes. Hemant, thank you so much again for your time. Best ever listeners, if you got value from the show, please leave us a 5-star review. Make sure you're following us on social media. And I hope all of the listeners have a best ever day. And we'll catch you next time.
Hi, best ever listeners. Joe Fairless here again. And one last thing before you go, would you like to receive a short weekly email with proven tips from experienced investors, free tools and resources, and a roundup of the week's most relevant news and best ever content? Well, if so, join the community of nearly 15,000 commercial real estate passive and active investors who receive the best ever newsletter. Just go to bestevercre.com/access and you'll get the very next one. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And as always, thank you for listening and have a best ever day.